Fabulous. Well, good morning. It's great to be here, and I'm really delighted to have a chance to share with you some of the work that we're doing in the health games area. I teach at UC Santa Barbara, and my background is for the past 35 years now. I've been working in children's media, learning media, and really for the past 20 years in games and learning and health. And so what I'm learning here about the toy world is really fascinating. What we know for sure is that all media, including games, are educational games, and the question is, what are they teaching? There's a curriculum in any piece of media that we see, and in my field of communication, we have a lot of people studying effects of commercial media. You know, what happens when you have violent content, or you're showing racial and ethnic and gender stereotypes? What do people learn from these kinds of things? And what I like to do is turn that on its head and say, how can we design better media using what we've learned from our theory, our research findings, and pure experience to take what we've learned, try to avoid the bad stuff, and incorporate the good stuff. And so here's just an example of some popular games, and you can look at these icons and have a very strong idea of what the curriculum is in each of these games. We've got Grand Theft Auto in the upper left, and the lower right is World of Warcraft. Tetris has things to teach us cognitively. Barbie has things to teach us about womanhood. The Sims, the dog there, is a simulation of daily life, and you're trying to keep your family healthy and thriving. Spore is teaching us about evolution and so forth. Dance Dance Revolution. So I come from the Sesame Street model. In fact, some of my training was with Sesame Street researchers in the early 70s, just a few years after Sesame Street had started. I worked with the researchers and the producers of Sesame Street, learning what makes children tick, how to bring a pointy-headed researcher to the table when you've got artists creating wonderful, creative programming for children. But there's room for people who understand how children learn, or what they need, what they want, representing their needs, and also instructional design, and in my field also now behavioral health and health message design, which are gigantic fields. We have a lot of knowledge about how to create messages that improve people's health behavior. And so I feel like I'm in a candy store. I'm pulling all these wonderful techniques and strategies for health behavior change and pulling them into interactive games. Trying to understand who the target population is, what the health condition is, many different limiting factors, but still, it's fantastic. And I'll be talking about some of these things as I tell you about some of the research that's been done on health games and what's been found. There's nothing as practical as a good theory. Theories really help us understand fundamentally, and in this case, how people learn, how people get engaged in interactive media, and what kinds of effects these media have, so that we can continue to make good products without reinventing the wheel every single time. We can build on our prior knowledge. I'm also wearing the hat of the director of a national program funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. It's called Health Games Research. And the foundation has allotted $8.25 million over the next 4.5 years toward improving health games through research. And what they do oftentimes when they're giving away big chunks of money is they find an expert in the field, and at their home institution, in my case UC Santa Barbara, we set up a national program office. And we're the ones who work on the granting process. And then after grants are awarded, we support our grantees, make sure that they've got the best tools and resources. And then when they get their findings, we have a great platform for announcing the findings and getting them out there to all these various constituencies that we're interested in. We want to influence the medical community, the game developer community, educators, parents, policymakers, other funders. We're also looking to build the field by getting National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, and so forth interested in funding this field. So in a way, we're seeding the field. We're developing resources that will be online, so I encourage you to check our website often, and I'll give that to you toward the end. We're developing a database of information, everything from research publications to what health games are out there. At last count, there were several hundred games that could be classified as health games. Research reports, going around giving presentations like this, collaborating. Right now I'm collaborating with Konami, who makes Dance Dance Revolution, and we're coming up with ways to revise Dance Dance Revolution so that it can be used in the schools, in physical education classes and after school. And we're awarding these grants. We've awarded $2 million already last year, and we have another call for proposals starting January of 2009 for the second chunk, the next $2 million. What we want to do is come up with health game design principles. The people who get grants are the ones who are really doing a study that's going to give us some fundamental knowledge about some aspect of designing a game. So one of our studies, for example, looks at cooperation versus collaboration, in health messaging, and can do, what are the ways that you learn one way versus the other. Then social versus isolated. Different ways of trying to figure out how to design good games. We want to demonstrate the effectiveness of health games and use the findings to improve future games. And another agenda that I have is to really set a standard throughout all these groups that I've mentioned before, that when they're thinking about buying or making or implementing a health game, that one of the first questions out of their mouth is there any evidence that this works? Is this a high quality game? Who made it? And how do I know that it's good? Because there's a lot of junk out there, even made by some very prestigious organizations that never really drew upon theories of learning or health behavior change. And so we want everybody to be questioning that and to really set that standard that we really need that pointy-headed researcher on the team to guide the design and the instruction of health games, and to continually test before the game is finished and afterward. So here's my one page of theory, in a way. I teach courses about this stuff, so it's very hard for me to distill this down to one slide. But we all know that interactive games are incredibly powerful environments for learning. You just have to watch anybody playing a game, and the level of engagement, and the motivation, and the learning that happens in games is just amazing. And what is a game, anyway, compared to any other kind of multimedia or media environment? And it's a raging debate, and I don't want to get into some of the higher level aspects of the debate, but what I've done is I've distilled the definition down to simply a game is a rule-based activity that involves challenge to reach a goal. And that's what I think distinguishes a game from some other activity, even play. Play can be non-game-like, but as soon as you have a challenge to reach a goal, then it's a game, and that's the thing that hooks us. That's why we want to play a little bit more, get our score up, or beat that opponent, or get to the next level, whatever that is. And I think that's really a lot like life. The kinds of people who are really interesting are the ones who have goals in life, and they're striving to reach those goals. And that's games make us come alive in that way. My second bullet, experiential, that's one area that I think is one of the best kept secrets about interactive media, and that they are more like real life than you would ever really imagine. A lot of cognitive science is being done on how people process mediated images, mediated messages, down from how we respond to film and how we actually, our heart skips a beat when something's coming at us in a film, even though you could say rationally, I know it's just a film, but our brains aren't wired to tell the difference. And there's good and bad in all of that, and I want to pull out the good. And if we're going to have our children be playing games, and we are funding studies of games for all ages, but especially our children, we want them to be spending their time well. So on the one hand, we're giving them realistic experiences, and in ways that they might not be able to have in real life. We can simulate worlds that don't exist. We can have them try out things safely in a simulated virtual environment and so forth. But the thing about the experiential aspect is that it's really involving and it's really impactful. And when you get into the social interactions with characters and with situations, those emotions that are felt are real, and the learning is just as real. We see transfer, for example, of skills developed in games transferring to real life in a very natural way. Games are being used to provide therapy, where people who have phobias, for example. One very common way to deal with people who have a fear of flying or a fear of elevators or driving is to slowly have them approach the target of their fear. But you can do this in virtual worlds, and it works really well. And just think of all the time and money you save doing that. And you can just imagine some of the other things you can do with understanding how a disease works in the body and how to combat it, for example. And so all of these bullets have a huge amount of theory and knowledge behind them, and they're all important building blocks in the creation of health games. So that's another way of thinking about the work that we do, is we're figuring out what the building blocks are and how to put them together with evidence-based findings. And games are just such an emotional, wonderful, social activity. And you might recognize this as Wii Bowling. There's Tuesday night virtual bowling with senior centers. And they are really into it. They've got their uniforms, they've got their nicknames. I mean, this is serious stuff. And what I love about the Wii, I know we've been calling some of it dust, but some of the magic of the Wii is that it's just an intuitive interface. These folks would never pick up a game controller, but this is something that we can all have fun with. And just look at the excitement on their faces. And I'll show you some more pictures. I've had fun kind of collecting these. But have you ever seen such, here's someone having post-stroke therapy. And look at how, engaged she is. There are there's anecdotal evidence about people post-stroke, for example, playing with the iToy, which is the camera-based interface. And they will work harder, they will reach farther, they will work longer when they're playing an iToy game than if their therapist simply tells them to do the same things in typical therapy. And what some of our grantees are looking at is how these things can extend therapy. Usually after a stroke you have a certain amount of weeks of therapy and then you're supposed to be done. But in the absence of any other intervention, you can give them a game to play, and you don't even have to worry about whether or not it's the best intervention. It's the only thing they've got. But some of our research is looking at whether or not games are the best as well, and that's an important question because sometimes they're not. Here's some more pictures of people being engaged by games. It's just an incredibly engaging, fun experience to play a game. I wanted to just mention that kids really get it when, what is a video game for them in terms of learning. I did a study where I asked individual kids, one by one, so they wouldn't influence each other, if they could learn from a book, a video, or a video game, how would they want to learn? And 49 out of 50 said, without missing a beat, well, of course a video game, are you nuts? And of course you might think, well, that's more playful, right? But then I asked why. And the answer was always something like this. Well, a video game lets you try things out. It's like, duh. You get the experience in a video game. A video game tells you when you're wrong. I mean, these are 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. And this was 15 years ago that I was asking this. And they get interactivity sometimes more than we professionals do. I want to tell you about a few games and some of the studies that were done on them. I was asked to talk about my early days in this field in 1992, 93. I got involved, and I was working with a company that made Super Nintendo games for health, and they asked me to make it work. How do you make this work? So one of our games was for asthma, Bronchi the Bronchiosaurus, and that's a Super Nintendo game. And you'll see he's holding his inhaler proudly, which was a big battle I had to fight with the artists and with everybody else. But the whole notion is we wanted kids and teens with asthma to see that it was a game for them. And the point of the game is that Bronchi has asthma, he has adventures to fulfill in a side-scrolling adventure game, but you have to keep his asthma under control. The breath strength is the gold standard, the measure for asthma. And he has asthma triggers he has to avoid, such as dust sacks and pollen and furry animals and sneezer characters who sneeze cold viruses on him. And his peak flow goes down every time he bumps into one of these things. And he starts wheezing and coughing, and he can't fulfill the game until and unless he finds his meds. So what we've done is we've really built in asthma self-care as a game goal. And I love that concept that we heard earlier about Skinnerian toys. Where it's just, you've got to learn this just by, you get rewarded in the game, and then that's what you learn how to do. Well, we're trying to make games for understanding and for skill rehearsal and for decision making. So you're learning through experience. It's very constructivist, but definitely not this lurching from reward and punishment. Packy and Marlin is a diabetes game, a very similar kind of approach with an underlying algorithm. In this case, it's 4 simulated days, where our 2 diabetic elephants have to eat meals and snacks every day and take their insulin and keep their blood glucose at a normal level. And you know, we had kids playing this game, and they said, "I'll never stop playing this game because it's my life." And one of the things we realized as we studied kids with diabetes was that there's a lot of stigma felt about having a chronic condition. And we felt that a game would be likely to break through that and help them see that their friends don't think they have, you know, horns growing out of their foreheads because they have a chronic condition. So they play the game with their non-diabetic friends, and it's not a big deal, and then they're self-caring more instead of avoiding taking their insulin or watching their blood sugar. And so I'll tell you the results of the study. Smoking prevention game, time doesn't allow, but this had another approach of basically showing how yucky the effects of smoking are on the body. And our claim to fame was a study we did with diabetic kids. Random trial, 6-month trial. We got NIH funding. We randomly assigned diabetic kids to take home either the diabetes game or an entertainment Super Nintendo game. And they were told to play it as much or as little as they wanted to, as long as they followed their parents' rules about when and how long they could play games. And we measured urgent care visits and emergency room visits related to diabetes. One of the things we realized is if we wanted health plans to buy this game and give it away to their members, we needed to show short-term benefits. Not 20 years from now, your patients won't have complications from diabetes. What's going to happen this quarter that's going to save you money? And so we found that the control condition started at time 0 with 2.5 visits per child per year. And 6 months later, after playing an entertainment video game, their average was just the same. The group that got randomly assigned to take home Packy and Marlin also started at 2.5 visits per child per year, but they went down to a half of a visit per child per year, which was a 77% drop, which is 2 visits per year, which can cost thousands of dollars to a health plan. We also did a study, several clinical trials of bronchi, and on average we were finding, again, control condition, no change over 6 months, treatment condition dropped 35 to 40% in emergency visits related to asthma, missed school days, and missed parents' work days. A few other studies that have been done, Dance Dance Revolution. Now that's an entertainment game that's been repurposed for health. And since we can call it a health game, it's arguably the most researched and one of the most popular health games that's out there that people are playing willingly. And I have, you know, hours of stories about effects of DDR on weight loss, on exercise, on motivating sedentary, overweight people to exercise. And it's now been put into every school in West Virginia after studies showed that it really improved your cardiac fitness. Remission is a game about cancer, and it's for teens and young adults who have cancer. And its goal was to improve cancer-related knowledge, self-efficacy, that confidence that you can take care of your cancer, and adherence to following your doctor's treatment plan. Long story short, a very extensive clinical trial did find all these things were impacted by the game. And Hope Lab has given me a few grants to study remission with healthy young adults, i.e. college students who are right there in that target age range. And I saw that this game could be a wonderful cancer prevention game because you're shooting cancer cells inside the bodies of cancer patients. You're using chemo, you're giving other kinds of treatments, and you're seeing the ravishing effects of cancer. So all of these are components of good health behavior messages. Two of the things you really want to change in people to get them to change their health behavior is you want them to feel that they're susceptible to the health condition. We are really good at rationalizing away, you know, that won't happen to me. I smoke, but you know, I'm not going to get cancer or whatever. And also, you've got to feel like it's a severe condition. And often, well, if I got it, it's no big deal. And so, long story short, because I know I'm out of time, is that this did, just after playing the game for 1 hour, we did a pre-test, post-test, 1 hour, comparative treatment and control group. The game Indiana Jones does not make you want to improve your cancer anymore, or eat better, or get more exercise, or get more screenings, anything like that. But when you play remission for 1 hour and you're healthy, you've never had cancer, you're intending to change those behaviors big time. And you do perceive cancer as being more severe and that you're more susceptible to it. And beyond that, we're doing a study of narrative and nurturing in the game. And this is getting at what I talked about earlier, of the theories about how people learn in games and how they change their behaviors. And I made 5 different versions of remission with high levels of drama and character interaction and narrative, and low, almost no levels, to compare the kinds of health behavior change that occur with and without a plot. And this is an important element because a lot of us are spending a lot of money on the narrative portions of our games. And what are we gaining from that, right? Because we know that good players of games, they look right through the story. They're going to the game mechanics. They can't even tell you the plot, and they couldn't care less. But who benefits from these stories? And should we put all these cinematics into games and all of that? I'll talk to you about it later. I know I don't have a lot of time, except to say that when you have a character who you care about, and there's a lot of dramatic action, there's more empathy about that character's disease, and that leads you to feel more susceptible yourself, because you're feeling a closeness with that character. When you only have the game mechanics of you just play and you shoot cancer cells, and you're told to shoot cancer cells in the human body, you don't see a picture of the character, then you know what, chemotherapy becomes something that you believe in more strongly, and you feel more efficacious to take chemo if you ever get cancer. And I wanted to share with you some of the quotes that are study subjects. Is that a little, oh, I see, that's a very gentle hook, isn't it? All right, just one more thing. It makes it seem like cancer is a serious disease. Here we've got our severity, right? And come on, white blood cells. I feel like I'm helping somebody, not just playing a video game. I could talk to you a lot about games not just being standalone, but being integrated into health, communicating with clinicians, putting one's own data into a game, playing a character. You could play Bronchi as yourself. Why not? Put your own asthma data in there and play that way. And then I won't talk more about health games research, but we have 12 grantees now, and they're doing really cool stuff. And thank you. I'm done.
Yeah, quick. Yeah, sure.
Any questions? Yes.
At the beginning, you showed games that were mostly spatial games, like DDR, that also involve cognitive, spatial cognition. Did you use that examples because you need it for health treatment, or because you found that it actually is more engaging or makes the gaming?
I just pick popular games like Grand Theft Auto. I just, we kind of know what these games are, and we have an idea of what the curriculum is. Although Grand Theft Auto was used for driving phobia for some people, because they get to drive a car. But that's beside the point. I was just sort of saying we all know what the curriculum of Grand Theft Auto is.
I asked more specifically about DDR and the Wii, something that you actually...
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Health games can be physical activity games. They can be games with mobile technologies that take you out and you're interacting with people and you're just supported by something that's networked and on the screen. And also the self-care games like Bronchi and Packy and Marlin, where that's just twitching with a controller and playing a typical game, but you're practicing skills virtually in the game. Health games can also be for training clinicians, delivering therapy, diagnosing people, pain amelioration. Games, just any game, we